Hello and welcome to Origin of Oz, an Our Michigan Life special. I'm Brent Ashcroft. It was the product of a man's imagination, and to this day it's widely considered the greatest fairy tale ever penned and one of the greatest movies in cinematic history. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is legendary. Most know the story. What most don't know is that some of the inspiration in Oz is believed to have come from a private community in West Michigan called Macatawa. It's nestled in Ottawa County in the hills near Lake Michigan on the south end of the Holland Channel. L. Frank Baum, the author of the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, summered with his family in Macatawa from 1899 to 1910. During his first year there, he wrote and published Oz. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll get to know L. Frank Baum by taking a trip back to Macatawa in the late 1800s, and we'll explore the lore that makes up this fascinating slice of Michigan history. If a hilly and heavily wooded neighborhood in Holland, Michigan was truly the backdrop used by L. Frank Baum while writing The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, one might wonder why this is the first time they're hearing about it. Well, let's just say Holland and the small private community of Macatawa have begun to embrace their place as being the inspiration for the Land of Oz. It's a community steeped in tradition. Windmills, wooden shoes, and spring-blooming perennials.
People think of Holland for tulips.
Dot the landscape.
I love it.
Dutch heritage will always be the primary theme in Holland. But some century-old lore.
We need to tell that story.
About a former resident.
He had quite an imagination.
His famous fairy tale.
To have that story be birthed out of this area.
And that hilly community near the lake.
Frank Baum did actually have a cottage in the Macatawa area.
Is making some serious waves.
I'm still amazed at the number of people that grew up in this town that still don't really know that story.
One might think something this big would be widely known.
Unless you knew someone who lived in Macatawa or in Castle Park, the L. Frank Baum story is kind of a hidden secret.
I think it's kind of one of the best kept secrets, which really, why would anyone want to keep it a secret?
Holland's mayor didn't even know about it.
It took us probably living here 10 years before we heard about the Wizard of Oz coming out of this area. We heard about Castle Park and it was like, what is that? And that relates to the Wizard of Oz.
Guess what? Secret's out.
The timing couldn't be better.
2019 marks the 80th anniversary of the movie The Wizard of Oz.
I sat down in the front row and my dad sat next to me and the film comes on. And all of a sudden it says, story by L. Frank Baum. My dad leaned over and he says, that's your great-grandfather.
It's also the 100th anniversary of L. Frank Baum's death.
We need to honor Frank Baum and what he has done for so many generations of people.
Is Holland, Michigan the origin of Oz?
There is a castle. There are the winding paths in Macatawa.
This 1899 image of Baum sitting on his porch in Macatawa, clearly working on a story, speaks volumes to many.
Always like to think he was typing up the final draft to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
I'm a believer.
So is the mayor.
Being able to tell a story that was woven right here next to Lake Macatawa in order to encourage future generations to read, to learn, to grow, and to develop as leaders. It just is an amazing privilege to be able to claim that.
Coming up after the break, we'll explore the lore that has connected Macatawa to Oz for more than a century. To do that, we'll take a trip back to 1899 and follow L. Frank Baum's interesting journey to Michigan.
Everybody wants to be Dorothy.
Then later, who inspired the most famous Oz character, Dorothy? Could it have been this young girl from Macatawa?